This is the Board Hawk Podcast. I'm Alan Gottlieb.
And I'm Alexis Menopal-Harrigan. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Board Hawk Podcast. This is our second episode where we are trying something new and going on video. This week, we are so excited to welcome Marlene De La Rosa, who is a current board member who represents North Denver. She most recently led an effort to develop a policy across Denver Public Schools focused on personal communication devices for students. We asked board member De La Rosa to come on and talk about her perspective on this board policy, talk about dynamics on the school board. She's been on with two different iterations of the board and certainly has some perspective we would love to hear. But before we do, I wanted to also share that, I first met Director De La Rosa when we were just both in Latino community work, and I think we met probably through Cafecito, but she did spend about 30 years of her career but working in the U.S. immigration court system. So that is another podcast for another day. I would love to chat about that on another time. But for today, we are talking to her in her role as a board member for North Denver. Welcome, Marlene.
Hi, how are you both today?
Doing great and glad to have you on. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for the invitation.
So we can start just by asking about the communication device policy. You and fellow board member Kimberly Sia have led this work on this issue. And if you could just tell us a little bit about the process you went through and the recommendations that emerged. I know it was a big community process with lots of meetings and people involved. So if you can just run us through that.
Yeah, I actually started this process probably like a year ago with various some community members and parents, and actually the Mayor's Youth Commission brought it up to me wanting to know when there would be a policy in place. So started working and meeting with these people last year sometime, and then we decided once the state legislators put in the bill to every school district must have a policy in place by July 1, brought this proposition to the board to allow me to create a board advisory committee. And so that was comprised of about 25 members of community, parents, and educators, different DPS staff. So we began this process back in December and started meeting in January. We had 7 meetings. 5 of them were really focusing on content. Like we try to think about what were the impacts of taking away, and I don't want to say taking away the cell phone, but giving students more time to focus on work, giving them more time and space that they can be okay to put their phone away and focus on what's going on in the classroom, and really looking at it really in the positive way. And we had representation. We had different departments from DPS come and talk to the group, the SPED department, safety, equity, talked about students with IEPs and 504s, our multi-language learners, which is a tremendous population and have use for communication devices at times. And and we had student voice and leadership come and sit with the group for about an hour to talk how they felt about a new policy on cell phones and other communication devices.
Thank you, Marlene. And before I ask a follow-up question, just wanted to clarify the state law you're referencing, that's a mandate, right? School districts must have a policy in place by July 1st. Just wanted to clarify that.
Yes, HB 135, 25-135.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And then I am curious, I love that you listen to such diverse groups, particularly from many different students and student perspective. I'm curious if you're able to share, what were some of the things that came up from some of the student voices?
The students really, they have a huge concern about safety. And mainly worked and spoke with mainly high school students and some middle school students, but mainly high school students. And safety is one of their concerns. What do I do in the event of a crisis or an emergency in the building? I need my phone. And if a crisis happens, I want to be able to call my parents or call my family. The other thing students wanted to know, there was students that were in a photography class and they in high school and they used their phone for taking photos, which not all the students are able to purchase a camera. So they use the phones for the photography class. Several of the high school seniors said when they're doing scholarships and other college applications, they want to use their own personal email and they want to use their phones, and they use their phones for a lot of that. Students mentioned that I know students at North High School have their IDs digital, their school ID is digital.
Mm.
So they use their phone to get in and out of the school building.
Oh, wow.
They use their phones when some students did admit they use their phone for ordering food.
Me too.
Yeah, they want to take their phone if they drive off campus to go to lunch. There
Oh,
were
that's
several.
how do you police that? Or like, that's a hard one.
Yeah, they need also their Colorado ID is now digital, so they have that on their phone. What were some of the other ones? There was a couple of interesting comments, and they said, this is right from the students. They said if the teachers were more engaging, we would be less likely to look at our phone.
I love the honesty.
Yeah. One of the, yeah, I mean, you mentioned students being concerned about safety. What you read nationally about this issue is that parents also are really worried about safety, given the proliferation of school shootings, by the way, which rarely take place. Actually, the mass shootings in urban settings, tend to take place in suburban and exurban settings, but still, you can understand the unease. So there must be some sort of an emergency plan that's part of your policy. Maybe that hasn't been fully developed yet about like, so what if the worst does happen and kids don't have their phones? What's the plan for how they can reach their parents or their parents can reach them or whatever?
The DPS safety team came and presented, and this was an important topic for the committee. They shared with them that in the first 7 minutes of a crisis or an emergency like that, they really want the kids to focus on the trained staff in the building, what to do. They don't want them to be on their phones. If they were hiding somewhere, they don't want phones ringing. They just want them really concentrating on what are the directives being given. And if it's a false alarm, they don't want all the students calling their parents rushing into the school, or a lot of students calling 911. And then the 911 operator is bombarded with calls, and then it could possibly be nothing that happened. But the district is really going to, I think, overall, what I see this is a really, like I said, a positive. And how can the district this is really an opportunity to partner with families in the district, because there are many aspects of this that we need partnership, because this will not be successful if we don't have the support and the buy-in from families. And that's a crucial piece of it in terms of the safety, in terms of making sure their students are having everything they need. If they're on an IEP or a 504, are the multi-language learners getting everything they possibly can without restricting device use? And just really, how do we work in partnership to provide like that really strong, supportive learning environment for families to buy into? That is going to be crucial to the success of this. So we will be monitoring it throughout the upcoming school year. And there's an entire project manager where it will be rolling out an entire plan, safety and communication and introduction to this new policy.
And maybe more engaging teaching in there as well. I'm kidding.
Yes. Yeah. We want kids to not have like the cyberbullying problems. Or if there are instances, some kids, I know there was a parent who said, my child sometimes has some anxiety attacks and they listen to the music on the phone to calm themselves down. So, there are situations where it is positive. Another thing the students did bring up was, you have raised us in this digital world, and now you want to take away this whole concept of using the phone for everything, and you want to take it away from us. But
Did you talk to my kid? That sounds like something my 11-year-old would have said when I tried to get him off of his
yeah,
computer and like, well, this is your problem. My problem. You raised us in this. That's funny.
and they want to know, how do I responsibly use AI? How do I responsibly use technology? How do you prepare me for that adult world when I need to go into college and use phones or go into whatever kind of career they choose, which mostly everything is related to cell phones now. So they want to know, how are you going to teach us the responsibility of
Right.
positive use of the communication devices?
Well, not.
You mentioned,
not-
Marlene,
Go ahead.
you mentioned really in passing like cyberbullying and stuff. And I was wondering that in addition to the impact of, of cell phones in classrooms on learning, there's also been a lot written, Jonathan Haidt, the NYU professor, wrote a book called The Anxious Generation that a lot of people credit with having led this whole national movement to ban phones and other devices in classrooms. But like, what evidence did you weigh about that kind of impact of smartphones on kids in schools, both inside the classroom and outside the classroom, that led you to recommend that there basically be a bell-to-bell prohibition?
Just to make this clear, the committee, this is the recommendation entirely of the committee, not Kim and I just took everything the committee recommended and put it into policy governance language. So this is not my own, none of that is my own personal, nor Kimberly Cia's. We wanted to honor the work of what this committee spent over 20 hours of work time, and plus the additional research. Stand for Children came in and gave them all one of the books of The Anxious Generation. And so combined, this is what the committee recommended.
Okay, so I'll amend my question to say, what did the committee weigh? What did the committee weigh on that kind of outside of academics, reasoning for doing this?
We had over, as I said, I started a year ago and I collected the policies that were currently in place in all of our high schools. I collected policies around the state, other districts, and other districts across the country, and an entire spreadsheet full of resources. So they read a lot of information, and this is what they finally decided that would be the best to help with focusing and trying to at least decrease cyberbullying, how they can increase more social interaction for kids. Bruce Randolph did this all last year, and they said, of course, the first semester was challenging. An entire change like that was challenging, but they said by the second semester, they had to go buy more sports equipment. They also have a middle school, so they were playing with each other and soccer and basketball, and they needed to go buy more equipment because they saw really an increase in that interaction amongst the students.
I love to hear that. I do have one clarifying question and then a follow-up question. The clarifying question, going back a little bit to Alan's point, the policy is only for personal student devices, right? That's a student's personal cell phone, a student's personal tablet, a personal smartwatch. It's not a ban on technology broadly in the classroom. Like they can still have their Chromebooks in middle school. They can still do their testing in a computer lab. Like that's still out. It's only personal devices.
Yes, that is correct. And now that I put this forward, now I've been getting some emails from some parents that now want to start something in terms of reducing screen time usage.
Oh,
especially in the elementary.
Yep. That I think is the next big wave that we're going to see.
Yeah.
And the advocacy is there's really been this big push against technology altogether, even for academic purposes, which my personal opinion is that's a very slippery slope because we've made incredible advances in academics thanks to some of these new technologies. But that's a different conversation. And I'm very glad that you're taking on those questions, especially given all the thoughtfulness you and the committee have put into this first round.
Yeah, I think for me, I really loved the entire experience of really going out into the community and saying, what it is that do you think is going to make this work the best? And given we had some social workers, we had the discipline team attended every single meeting. We had several of the DPS staff attending all the meetings, but just to see the work and dedication they had in order to come up with this language. And there were principals, there were teachers, there were all sorts of school staff in the room, parents that had elementary, middle, and high school students.
Well, you basically just answered my next question, which maybe I'll just make a comment now. You know, what I really appreciate about the process that you and Director Sia led is it truly was a comprehensive community process. While other districts, we had Vice President of the Boulder Valley School District, Alex Medler, on sometime late last year. And I think just as a board, they did minimal community engagement and they just made the decision to pass the policy up in Boulder to do bell-to-bell device bans. And, I'm sure people felt strongly one way or the other, but I guess that's a comment. But is there anything you want to add to that of just how robust the community engagement was as opposed to maybe other districts that didn't do a community engagement process and just passed the policy?
I think I attended a session at Casby with the District 51 Mesa School District with the superintendent, a board member, and a staff. And they really shared, I got some great information from them. And one is really how to focus on the positive aspects of this. This is not a negative in any sort of a way. We are not taking away anything, but we are trying to bring more to the students' academic experience. And in that was the way that they had a campaign. They called it More Social, Less Media. And so they talked about how, the superintendent, they got people to do little TikToks or videos, and it was a real community created policy. And that's what I think will work. And I really hope to do this when bringing forth other policies to the district, because I think when we think about when we're trying to create a policy, like there has not been a policy like this communication device that is affecting every single student, traditional and charter, and every single school building employee and families.
And then just to clarify for those who may not know, CASB is the Colorado Association of School Boards, correct?
Yes.
Great.
I'm now a CASB board member.
Oh, nice. Congrats. We've been criticized that we have too many acronyms, so we're always trying to help.
Yes.
Clarification of the acronyms.
Thank you. I know I do that all the time.
It's when it's hard not to after a while. One more question on this policy, Marlene, and that is it's highly dependent on individual principals and teachers to be effectively enforced. So how do you think that it can be applied uniformly? And like, is there any way to put teeth to it to make sure that it doesn't just sort of slip into kind of a semi ban as opposed to like really being hard and fast and consistent across the district?
From everything that I have heard from the school leaders is that they wanted a district-wide policy to lean on. So they can't say, I'm doing it this way. Well, they don't do it over there at South High School or TJ or wherever, or DSST doesn't do that. But this is going to be a policy. And what I believe is the Charter Collaborative is going to take on whatever policy and implement the same thing in their schools. So they wanted to have a policy. So it would be the same across every grade, every school. I think some of the feedback, I will share this too. As of today, we have had over 6,300 responses to the survey. And that is an absolute record for the district. Feedback on a survey, and it doesn't close until Friday. And so we still, I don't know how high the responses will go, but we've had about 70% of parents responding so far. So that's wonderful.
Well, depending on when we post this, we should try to link the survey as well, Alan.
Yes, please do. And so it will go. It's in first read. The survey closes on Friday, so Director C and I will be working on this over the weekend, maybe, or at least, first of the week, so we can bring forth some amendments from what we've heard. I know some of the things that we've heard is that there might be need to be some adjustments to the high school because high school students drive, they go to different campuses. Some high schools like Northfield have more than one school building. So some of the things did hear from some of the high school educators is that they don't want to constantly be monitoring kids with the phone. Kids can go out to the parking lot to their car and use the phone. So we may have to make some adjustments to the high school level policy.
Yeah. One quick follow-up to my last question about, the enforcement being dependent on principals and teachers. So I guess what I'm wondering is, it's great that you heard from school leaders that they want a uniform district policy. How is it left up to individual schools in your mind, or how do principals make sure that all the teachers in a given building are enforcing this uniformly?
That will be once we create the executive limitation, then the superintendent will determine how he's going to administer the policy and the specific details, such as where is the phone exactly going to go once they walk in the door. So that will be left up to the superintendent and his team. They've been working on an implication memo. We haven't received it yet, but they have been working on that, and they're trying to understand from a lot of the school leaders. And it's an acronym that I don't know exactly what the words mean, but the OSDs, the operational something.
Oh, yeah. I don't know what you're talking
School
about.
directors, I'm just
Something.
guessing, something like that.
Yeah, I don't know what exact stands for, but they supervise like a group of high schools, and they work with the principals. So they're meeting and they're working on an implication memo to present to Director CNI, and then we will, if need be, make some amendments to this first read of this policy.
Yeah, there'll be more devils in the details than we can imagine at the moment as you think about it. Just some of the things you said about high school kids and everything.
Yeah,
Okay, well,
I mean,
thanks.
I was going to say, if you think too about like Florence Crittenton or some of our students at Emily Griffith High School and some of our other high schools, their parents, they have their own children. So to actually physically take the phone away from them is not the best thing.
I think it's operational services team. I think.
Okay.
I think.
Okay.
But then I think
Thank
the
you.
title is director of operational services, I think.
Yeah,
I mean,
know.
obviously-
An assist from Google.
Just really quickly, I mean, obviously there has to be some sort of a policy also as part of what the superintendent's going to do about how parents can reach their kids and including the parents who are students needing to, or if there's a child, if their kid's in a daycare and there's an emergency that the school, so there's going to have to be a really quick way for parents to reach their kids to reach their parents, et cetera, if they don't have their devices.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm less concerned about that. I mean, I've had to pick up my kid, from school. You just call the front office and it doesn't take them long to track down your child. And if it does, then you've got some bigger issues. But
if we think back to when we were in school, you called the office, you left a message, but many of the schools already have something in place. So they've already worked through messaging services. So I only bring up Bruce Randolph. I know they have a phone in the hallway in the lobby, so they can students can go use the phone. Say they want to call Safe to Tell, they have access to a phone, and that will be made available for all the schools.
And they know how to use a landline?
Yes.
Well, they know that. I know the little ones can't tell time on a regular clock, so I don't know. We might have to instruct
that's
them.
hard. Okay, it takes me. For me, an analog clock and Roman numeral, I never quite figured that out, and it's still hard for me. So maybe it's my generation, but yeah. These kids are trying, and so am I. But yes, a landline would be nice for the kids to start learning how to use.
Yeah, because we still want them to, say they need whatever reason they're having a personal situation and they need to use the phone. Like some of the immigrant parents, they wanted their kids to have a phone in case ICE were to pick them up during the school day.
Yeah.
They want to
Yeah.
call and leave a message. They want them to know what they need to do or what's going on.
That's
So
good, but yeah, you're right.
yeah, I
always-
did hear, I went to meet with some parents in Southwest Denver, and that was their big concern.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, Marlene, thank you so much for being a champion on this, spending so much time making sure that the community engagement process was comprehensive. Huge kudos to you, Director Sia, and the whole board on this policy, and looking forward to seeing what the board finally passes and the recommendation from the superintendent as well on the implementation.
Yeah, we will be voting on the final. I am hoping the final read on June 8th.
Perfect.
Our board
Okay.
meeting changed for the month of June.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Great. Good to
Yeah, I
know.
thought it was the 11th.
Yeah.
No, it's Monday, June 8th.
Okay.
Perfect. Mark your calendars, everyone. Well, with the time we have left, we wanted to pivot to a couple of other issues that were top of mind for us and other folks, the community we talked to. I'll kick us up. I wanted to ask and open up the discussion. Something I've observed about you is you're very generous to your colleagues when maybe others in the seat, and I'll just speak for myself, would maybe not have been as generous in those positions. And I've been very impressed with how you navigate conflict or when there might be a tense moment in a board meeting, how you seem to be able to work well across differences, regardless of what that difference might be. So, you're cordial, you have good relationships, it seems like, at least publicly facing with your board colleagues. Can you talk about why is it that you've been able to navigate in this way that I haven't necessarily seen other board members in many, many years do necessarily well? How do you approach conflict on the board? How do you approach differences on the board?
I mean, I think differences is the sign of a good, healthy board. And how we work through them, we have to work hard at recognizing we are always going to have differences, but that we shouldn't take it personal. That these are what people come forward and the people that they are representing are asking them to bring forward to the board. And I would say after 30 years of working in a courtroom environment where there is always opposing sides, you learn that there is, how do you come to that agreement with the two parties? And you also have to focus on what is legal or what is in policy of what we can do and the decisions we can make. And so I think that that time working in that has brought me a great deal of skill in serving on the board. And I think also you go into a board meeting and you really never know what decision might be made. It was the same as going into a courtroom. And even though you might have something preconceived in your mind, it doesn't always happen once you're in the middle of a decision or a vote.
Thanks, Marlene. And even a little more specifically, I mean, there have been, at least to my mind, hints of some, discord on the board. There's been a series of 6-1 votes where the president, Xochitl Gaitan, has been the one, and the 6 of you have voted another way. First of all, sort of echoing what Alexa said, you seem to be one of the board members, maybe one of the few board members, if I'm not mistaken, and I may be, who's able to kind of bridge the divide, and you can talk to the other board members who are maybe voting in that 6, but also have a good and cordial relationship with the board president, with some of the other board members seemingly do not. And I'm just curious how you've been able to navigate that divide and how you would characterize the current state of, board relations among and between board members.
I mean, I think Director Gaitan and I, from the beginning, have agreed that we don't always agree. We come from different spaces. And I always recognize, as long as you're honest with me about what you feel, what you're thinking, I respect that. And that's what I respect from any of my board colleagues. Be honest, come forth to me with whatever it is. And we try to figure out what it is we can come to an agreement on if we can. And if not, we recognize that that may be a topic we will never agree upon. But her and I have talked that through from the beginning.
And yeah, and so you've been able to maintain that relationship with her where it seems like some of the other board members have it, which I just think is good because communication's better than no communication.
It is absolutely necessary for us to, whatever our thinking is or whatever our desire is to want to do something on the board, we do need to be honest with each other and recognize that we might have a difference of opinion, but how do we come to focus on what we can do collectively? We're one voice, and we need to remember that.
And I
Right.
think you're also modeling just like good democracy for our students and teachers, especially in a world where so often, you look at Congress and it's such a disaster, I'll just say. So to see there is this silver lining of there's opportunities to be in disagreement with people around policy and governance and still be respectful is impressive because we haven't necessarily seen that on this board before.
And really the last question I think I have, Marlene, is, despite all of this stuff we've been saying about your ability to bridge differences and reach across, there's certainly segments of the community that I talk to that haven't been thrilled with some of the votes you've taken over the last 6 or 8 months, specifically the vote to extend the superintendent's contract when there hadn't been a really comprehensive evaluation done of him yet, and also the vote to censure John Youngquist, which a majority of the board voted to do, but which was quite controversial for a variety of reasons. A lot of the folks who are unhappy with those votes in particular that I can think of listen to this podcast. So I just thought this is a great chance for you to kind of address them directly and explain those two votes and maybe just how you approach philosophically being a board member and trying to not take consistently one quote unquote side or the other. And there you are, you're moving again. You're unfrozen. Okay. So anyway, that's the question.
Okay, I'll start with the superintendent's contract. I believe that I've seen progress with the district, with the superintendent. I have been volunteering with the district since, let's say, 1995, 1996, somewhere around, no, maybe a little later than that. Maybe 2000. So I have been involved with the district, and there has always been challenges in the district. There has always been a huge learning gap. I would say when my own students, my twins started school, it was likely that one of them was not going to graduate, that one of them was going to drop out, that my son might drop out, that my daughter might end up with a teen pregnancy. So I have seen all of that especially with Latino students. There was a study where they tracked kindergartens through high school, where it said after 6 years, only 5 of 100 of those kindergarten males, Latino males, would end up with a degree. So it is something, and I have seen progress in the district under Dr. Marrero's leadership. And especially coming after COVID, it's been really difficult. And we now see that 2 of the superintendents that started when he started, the Cherry Creek superintendent has resigned. The Jeffco superintendent is going to resign. It is not an easy job by any means. And are there things that he can work on? Absolutely, yes. And can we do a better job of guiding him? Yes, we can. And it is our duty and our obligation as a board to do that, to provide guidance, to provide the critical feedback, to provide the positive feedback. And so I do believe that there has been progress made in this difficult time after COVID. We have seen improvements. Are they as great as people would like to see? No, but we have not regressed in any of the important data that people look at. And so I wanted to continue to support this work. Dr. Marrero has done a great deal for Latino students. We have the Seal of Biliteracy, which this year, 10 years ago, there was 195 students that graduated with the Seal of Biliteracy. This year, we had over 1,600 students graduate with that Seal of Biliteracy. So his commitment to recognizing students' language and culture as a valuable part of their education experience. His commitment now, he did the Latine success, student success, which we should be seeing that data at the end of May, focusing on what can we do in these 9 elementary schools to support Latino students. So, and that is something I have not seen previously. And I go back to, I think when I first started volunteering with DPS, it was still Jerry Wartgau. So I go way back.
Yeah.
So
I go back to Irv Moskowitz, so I beat you.
far back.
I'm a lot older than you are.
But I have seen some positive things with the superintendent, and I've seen some positive things in the academics with students. So is the reason why I did vote to extend the contract. And I do get people that ask me all the time, why did I do that?
Well, thank you.
So what
I think some people feel like it was a premature extension, and I think that was probably the biggest thing I've heard in terms of complaint. What would you say to that?
It could have been premature, yes.
Yeah.
It could have been a little bit premature.
I appreciate your comments about the Cherry Creek superintendent, the Jeffco superintendent, and, I'm really interested to see the Latine student success data at the end of May. I think that'll be really interesting and would be great to have somebody from the district on to talk about some of that data. But my, as you know, Dr. De La Rosa, Director De La Rosa, as you know, I helped lead an organizing effort of Latinos to ask the board to hold off on the extension. Again, for all the reasons for what Alan said, it did feel premature. My concern now, I guess, is it's the contract is structured such that if the board were to let go of the superintendent, it would pay out the rest of his contract, which seems unfair. And so the superintendent, isn't necessarily incentivized, even if he was unhappy in the role. And I have no idea if he is happy or unhappy in the role. He doesn't necessarily have an incentive to leave. So I'd be curious, we don't have time to do this right now, but to go and look at the contracts of the other superintendents and how they compare to this one. But all that to say
that would be really interesting. I know I brought this up in one of our CASB meetings about how many superintendents or how many of the districts would be looking for superintendents this school year. And it's interesting that the lifespan of a superintendent is, maybe around 2 years.
That's true.
And how do you see any great improvement in that time when you're trying to change an entire system, especially one as large as DPS?
Yep. Fair. Yep.
And then the other one, again, just circling back to the question about the censure of John Youngquist and your decision to vote for that.
I think from reading the investigative report, from hearing the staff who felt they were treated in a negative way, that is not something I don't condone that. And they felt that it was there were racial, I don't know what the word is.
Oh, bias. Racial bias.
Yes.
Racial bias. Yeah.
Yes. And their interactions that they had with Director Youngquist, and which was why, my daughter was at East and I served on the CSC with Director Youngquist, with Mr. Youngquist, and I was on another committee focusing on our students of color in the district there not in the district, but at East. So spent a lot of time getting to know him, and it wasn't something that I was very surprised at that, but I listened to what the staff shared.
Thanks, Marlene.
And so I just think that we as school board members need to always hold ourselves up to the highest standards because we are ex- appearing as a role model to our students. And it's something that we don't want to happen in any school situation. So, which is the reason I voted that way.
Thanks for sharing. That was going to be our last question, but I actually wanted to throw one more at you. You know, you and I saw each other, I think, last week, and we're talking about, I couldn't remember if, you're the first Asian American on this elected to the school board, and I think Filipina by descent, right?
Yes.
Which is so exciting. Congrats. And we need as much representation and diverse representation as possible on the board. Your comment about racial bias just made me think, I've seen over many years different iterations of the board, especially with Black, white, and Latino board members. And now with you, with multiracial board members who, is Asian as well. I'm curious to get your perspective on what is it like as a school board member who you did identify as a woman of color, I would assume, and then navigating racial dynamics and politics and policy as a woman of color. I'd just be curious to get your perspective on, the strength of that, the challenges, bias you may encounter as a woman and as a Latina. Like, I would love to hear your perspective on what that's like on this board, and maybe even on the previous board as well.
I think it's always challenging. We always come where that kind of feeling that you have to prove yourself above and beyond and over more than everybody else. So it is one thing that I strive to do, always to present myself in the best possible way, in the best possible manner. And it is difficult as a female sometimes in working with different people, not just on the board, but we have to work with a lot of people in the district. So, and as board members, we're always treated with the utmost respect. And so I also try to do that with everybody that I interact with in the district and on the board. But it's challenging. It is challenging sometimes when you're trying to represent, if I want to come and represent Latino students, and then we get into kind of a dynamic of, well, what about the Black students? What about the white students? What about these different populations? What about the students on IEPs and all these different categories? And we sometimes get into this, like, we're struggling to get a piece of the pie. I'm sorry, my cat just woke up and he's like,
I was going to say your
can't
cat
even
wants
look
some
at
screen.
me.
Your cat wants some screen time. Show us your cat. It's okay.
Yeah. Cats love laptops.
Oh, yeah.
Pets are always welcome on Board Talk.
They are.
Cute.
I lost my train of thought. Where was I?
How it's
I
hard
was saying,
sometimes. Yeah.
we're struggling and fighting to get something like, is it lower income? And, I was a mom on free and reduced lunch mom, and my kids were in Head Start. So I felt like it was a struggle, or people were, oh, well, you don't have any education knowledge. What would you know about anything? You're a single parent, or your kids are on reduced lunch. What do you know? You don't have the expertise to talk about anything. And so you feel like you're always trying to prove yourself, when it's unfortunate that sometimes you get into having to feel that way.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Marlene. And I think it's more important to have representatives that look like and have lived experience in the diverse student population. So thank you for representing our kids.
Yeah. And, and it is, and I think one thing that's so challenging, and when you're on the board, is because you are working and you're making decisions and policies with people's most precious thing to them in the world. So it's always hard, right? The parent's always right, and the parent always wants more for their kids than any other kids get. And so you're always trying to navigate that as well.
That's generous of you. I do not think the parent is always right. I'll
Well, they
speak to my
believe
husband.
they're
My
always
husband is a parent and not always right about our kids.
well, they believe they're always
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
right?
Right.
And you have to
I'm going to clip that,
recognize
Alexis.
that.
Yeah.
So,
But
okay. Well, Marlene, I really appreciate you coming on and spending this much time with us. We're probably at time. Any last thoughts or anything else you wanted to get across before we sign off?
no, I just want to continue to try to do the best I can. I'm really committed to that community and parent engagement which is something I did when I was in the district, parent engagement campaign when I was volunteering with DPS. And that's something that's super important to me because we all do need to work together because it takes all of us to do that.
Well said. Thank you. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Marlene. We really appreciate your time. I know, especially this season, towards the end of the school year, you're starting to do graduations. You obviously have a huge policy you've been working on. Congratulations on that, and good luck to you and the board on passing that resolution. And thanks again for joining us. We're excited to hopefully can have you on again sometime soon.
Yeah. Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about my experience and my thoughts.
Well, thanks again, Marlene, and thanks to everyone who's watching and listening. And we will be back again soon with another episode. So long, everybody.